Good morning. So great to see you, Kelly.
Yeah, you too, Amy.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. The gallery is so beautiful in the morning. I love to be here. It's just a different sense of light. We have three gorgeous, large windows, and yeah, it just the works like pop off the wall. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us this morning. We're so lucky to have Kellie Lehr with us to discuss her work. Her work is currently on view in our exhibition Marking Folding Time, which you can come by or view online until April 28th. So glad to have you, Kellie. I'm just gonna do a little introduction so we can kind of figure out where you're coming from, Kellie. So Kellie Lehr is a visual artist based in Bentonville, Arkansas, and I love so much that you can join and we can discuss things even from so far away. She holds an MFA from Lesley University College of Art and Design in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and a BS.BA from the University of Arkansas. Her works included in the 2023-2025 Juried Registry of the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C. by its Arkansas Committee. That's amazing. I just have to say that must be an amazing thing to be included in. Let's see. Kellie recently participated in the Artists in Residence program at Foundation House in Greenwich, Connecticut, and attended the Chateau d'Orvaux Artist Residency in Champagne-Ardenne, France this spring. Her work has been in exhibitions across the United States, including the Manifest Gallery in Cincinnati, the Painting Center in New York City, 21C Museum Hotel in Bentonville, Arkansas, the Arkansas Museum of Fine Art in Little Rock, Arkansas, Fort Smith Regional Arts Museum, and the Lunder Arts Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Kellie's first solo show in New York City took place at the Painting Center in January 2024. So you are a very busy person, and we're so lucky to have your work here with us in Manchester, New Hampshire. Definitely. Let's see. Of course. Well, welcome. Anyone who has any questions, please pop them in the chat. We'll get to them as the chat goes on. And my first question, because I am so lucky I get to ask all of them essentially, is that your work is so unique. Can you tell us a little bit about working with canvas and the fabric in the way that you do?
Sure. Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you for including me in the show. It's exciting to get to show New Hampshire for the first time ever.
Yes.
New place. Um, yeah, so a couple of years ago, I made a big shift. I had been working on paintings coming from observational painting and primarily um, uh, landscape painting was kind of a
Yes.
focus for me. Um, but I really felt like I was wanting a more tactile, more haptic connection with my work, thinking about touch, care, thinking about like the unseen acts of the everyday life. And that kind of led me to working with large unstretched sheets of raw canvas. I started working with folding and thinking about implications and meaning that could be embedded in the work by coming at pattern from a more personal place. My own memories of like being at my aunt's home and just growing up and folding clothes and thinking about these acts that can have magic in them and can have like real love in them, but that aren't really seen. And I think a lot of painting for me is about bringing about things that aren't seen into the world. So that kind of connected with the way of moving forward with the work that engaged a deeper level of meaning. So all the works that are in this show are coming from that place. So they were worked with raw and then found their form and stretched.
I love that. Okay, that you could definitely tell that that they sort of been stretched around the canvas, and you can see a piece just above my shoulder here. This is one of Kellie's pieces that definitely has almost like a quilt sort of feeling to it. And I love that you're concentrating on like the folding and the care in the folding. And I think that that is such a rich place to come from. All the works that we have on view at Seesaw are smaller, and which may be a little different than what you've done in the past, I've looked at your other pieces, and they are really, really large, large folded pieces.
Mhm.
So, is it is it necessity that you wanted to show some smaller works? Obviously, a little bit, but or is this sort of like a newer vein of work that you're going into? Like just a little bit of the
Yeah.
differences between the larger folded works and then the works that we have on view here.
Yeah, to me, they're coming all from the same place. So
Yes.
whether or not I'm working on small pieces or large sheets, they're all coming from um, this tactile way of working with fold in the studio. That I love working. I love making small works. And I love making big work. So
Yeah.
it's just a different. You kind of use a little bit of a different language, but yet there's still, I feel like I threw a connection. So the works that you have, I think they were all started the same way, but I did start with smaller sheets. So
Mm.
I will often create like different sizes of canvas to work with and manipulate. And then one of the new things that I did that you have in your gallery is also taking some of those really big sheets of canvas and cutting them up. So one that I felt like didn't quite make the cut, they didn't become something, they ended up being cut up. And that residency I did that you talked about in Greenwich, Connecticut at Foundation House, I started 4 of those pieces that you have there. And that was like really just taking remnants of pieces that were either cut off or somehow discarded, and then sort of just playing with like, how can I still make something of this?
Yeah.
So,
I
so
love
that's
that. Yeah, it definitely continues the idea of care and like, okay, this didn't really work out, but maybe it's going to work out in another context. And the works that we have are so beautiful. One of my favorite things about them is it's sort of like the abstract, almost like watercolor sort of vibe. So I'm gonna just grab my phone off the tripod here, and I'm gonna show some detail work. And Kelly, if you could tell us a little bit about, beside, like a little deeper into what you're thinking about while you're creating these works and sort of what you're trying to convey. And I'm going to show the one right behind me because it is so beautiful. Let's see here. I'm going to turn my camera around. There we go. Yeah, this is incredibly gorgeous. I love the black on the left and then these triangles. And that's what I was saying. Like I love the paint and the layers here on this work.
so that piece in particular, the the first thing you'll see, those are actually remnants from my
Hmm.
great aunt's quilt.
Really?
um, right down the center, and they're
Yeah.
flipped. So they're inside
Yes.
out. So you see the little hand stitches. They were all hand done, not machine,
Wow.
uh, by my great aunt. And I inherited this quilt. It's kind of falling apart. And after quite a long time of trying to think about what to do with it, I finally just sort of let myself think about how I could take pieces and let it be
Yeah.
integrated and inspire new work. So it's almost like a collaboration between my great aunt, who I've like just these wonderful memories of sitting at her
Wow.
house, and into my own work, and thinking about
I love that.
the artistic history of of my family, and she was one of many who had these artistic inclinations
Yeah.
that weren't really recognized. Like when
Hmm.
I was growing up, it wasn't really talked about. But it was just sort of part of the fabric.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's I love these pieces, and I could consider that like kind of an ongoing body of work. I think
Yeah.
you have 2 of them, and they'll continue. So I have the actual I actually have it right here.
You do? Oh, I love
Yeah,
that. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's
yeah,
so intricate
yeah.
too. And
It,
I have a little bit, of a seamstress background.
Mm.
So those tiny, teeny little squares, or triangles, I should say, and then hand stitching them, there is so much time and care in that. And I love that you've shown in the first piece, it was the back side of the quilt. And
Right.
then this piece, it's the front. And I just love that. And the color on this piece, it just jumps off the wall. They're really, really beautiful, totally wrapped around the stretcher bars, and then even onto the corner here. That is such a beautiful story. And I kind of feel like a little bit sometimes being a curator, I'm a little bit of an archivist, you know, so it's tough. You want to make sure that things stay like in the history there. But I think that what you're doing with this with the quill is a really gorgeous thing, and it lets it live, right? Because where else is it going to go?
Right.
It lets it lets it be in these spaces that basically, you know, maybe your ancestors didn't have access to at all. So there's a lot of really fun through lines there
Mhm.
that we can think about. I'm going to show one more piece or a couple more pieces. Why not? This I love. And there's a little bit of a departure from that. So can you tell us a little bit about this piece?
So this is one that I worked with ink.
Yeah.
And just raw canvas and ink folding. So those patterns came from initial folds, washing it in the sink, hanging it up to dry, and
Oh,
then stretching it and painting it layer after layer. And this one I was kind of experimenting with how far I could go. So I didn't leave a lot of that initial ink that you'll see on some of the others. I sort of
yes.
let it go where I really thought I ruined it. You know, it was one of those
Really?
where I thought I
Yeah.
went too far. But then what I found in painting is if you do go too far, then you just have to keep going, right? You just
Yes. Yeah.
keep going
Right.
until you get
You
somewhere
kind
else.
of push through it.
Yeah, push through it.
So
Um,
beautiful.
but there's this, you know, thinking about touch and care and um, you know, is one of the things that led me to thinking about sort of clothing, and like some of my pieces allude to like a garment. There's
Yes.
kind of a subtle like little hanger in there that's kind of a private joke for me. Um,
Definitely.
so
Ah, yes. Now I see
yeah.
it. Wow. Yeah, and with this piece, which is called Nyx, which I absolutely love, it has a dress pin in it. Like this is what's holding this lovely piece of canvas. But yeah, I just, they're so beautiful. It takes a presence on the wall too. I sort of started the exhibition off with this piece because I was like, this is so grounding.
Mm.
It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, and that those initial layers, you could kind of see through the red at the top
Yeah.
left. And that's coming from an ink wash that I did initially. And kind of taking that folding another step was washing it in the sink. It was
Yes.
another kind of act of thinking about maintenance, thinking about care. I spent a lot of time actually looking at, I was really interested in performance artists
Mm.
and thinking about artists like Merle Latterman Euclides
Oh, wow. Yeah.
would do different kinds of performance art. She washed the museum steps. She's
Wow.
really well known for her work
Yeah.
with the New York Sanitation Department, and just kind of highlighting things that we don't think about. We just sort of don't see
Yes.
um, in our everyday lives. So that was another way of like embedding meaning for myself in these pieces. And then that piece also I started cutting up, and so some of
Love
it is paint
that.
layers, like the red and green are painted, and some of the blacks, but then there are blacks that are also cut and collaged, and then that left piece is charcoal. So
Oh, wow.
I also like
Yeah.
with like the body and movement of the body, and so using charcoal and different implements where I think about how to use my body in the work, and that's why I work on these really large sheets on the floor.
Yeah.
And so that was a piece cut from that.
I love that. And one piece that I absolutely love is this here. And just the cohesiveness of the show. It's been really fun to work with everybody all together, all four artists. But as soon as I set everything out to hang, I was like, this piece here and Steven's piece, they need to go next to one another. I like often I just get like a gut feeling, and it's like, I think it's the dark blue in Steven's piece and then this beautiful, beautiful black in yours. This is such a cohesive piece and some really beautiful color that's coming through here.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
really
And
love
I think about the meaning of the making and how
that.
color, like the way color is put on a work. So I've also been doing a lot of experimentation and playing with soak staining, different
Oh,
soak
wow.
staining techniques,
Yeah.
and sort of thinking about the difference of when a paint is soaked all the way through the canvas layers versus the layers that are, either collaged or
Mhm.
thicker layers that lay on top, and just sort of the meaning of that, and thinking about like thinking about that in relation to time, right? Like things that happen right now and their meanings, and then things that we remember that happened in the past.
Yeah.
So painting for me has a lot to do with time, and I think it's like this really cool way of time travel, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking of something yesterday, of a story, and I actively have a memory of it, like that I know didn't exist. But if I was gonna like talk
Yes.
about it, I would say like this is what happened, but it's like, no, I completely made that up. And that's just like this is like the story I told myself about an event. And it's really it's really there's a lot of plasticity
Yeah.
there, which is our memories are so interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things too, I'm really interested in, just from a side standpoint, is neuroscience, and they've been able to find that there's this connection between how we make visual memories or visual images in our mind, and the same neural pathways fire when we make things with our hands.
Really?
So yeah, this
Yeah,
kind of tactile haptic knowledge is really fascinating.
definitely, definitely. So, what's coming up next for you? What's going on? Ideas or shows, or let's talk a little bit about your residency in France.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it was amazing. So I have about 9, 10 pieces that were started in France, and some of them are finished, and some of them are in progress. So that's really what I'm working on now, is building some supports for some larger, more sculptural vessels, and then I have some really small pieces too. And playing with different ways of building those supports. Um, and then I have a show coming up called the Delta Triennial that will be at the Museum of Fine Art in Little Rock, Arkansas in June. So I'll have a big
Congratulations.
sculptural piece in that show. So that's exciting. And then I'm really excited to show with Tracy Hayes and Stephen Cabral in Boston, or at the South Art George, south of Boston, in September 12th is our opening.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, I really hope to join, and it'll be really fun to see. We're having a conversation here in this show, and things will sort of change, and we'll sort of get to understand how the conversation is
Yeah.
considered. Congratulations to everybody on that exhibition. That's great. Tracy says that she appreciates how everything is considered with care and concern, and everything has value. And I think that that's a really beautiful way of putting into words what you're saying here, is that we move through life, we really do care about everything that it is that we do, in different veins for sure. But I love what you were talking about with the performance artist, and saying like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to watch the steps, and that is something that we want to think about and something to present, yeah, clearly as As a woman in the arts, I really appreciate that sentiment for sure.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
I sort of feel like the work I hope will stand on its own. So even if you don't
Yes,
know like all the way in which it was made and sort of that meaning that's embedded, but I also hope that people will be curious about it and maybe allow that to unfold and influence things.
definitely. Obviously, I love looking at works that are just stunning in general, and then when you dive into them, like the backstory is just as beautiful, and all of your work is represented in that way, for sure, definitely. For anybody that wants to follow along with you, what's the best way to keep in touch? Instagram, email, website? What's the best way?
Yeah, I think Instagram is probably the best way. And then I try to update my website, but probably not as often as I'll put something on Instagram.
For sure. Yeah, it's been so fun to follow along and watch you process things in the studio. I love this little, light that we get to see into artists working. Let's see. The last question I have is that it's difficult to keep showing up as an artist, what are some things that keep pushing you forward or making sure that you're coming back, or just sort of like what's your relationship with keeping a consistent studio practice and putting yourself out there all the time and being vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good
A lot
question.
in one question.
I don't know. I mean, I guess, the thought that I'm thinking about right now is sort of this connection to both like thinking about my great aunt and her endeavors and like kind of continuing having a conversation, but trying to add something to that conversation.
Yeah.
And then thinking about, painters and artists in the past too, that I think about a lot,
Mm,
like Sam Gilliam or Simon Hontai, like people that were experimenting in the studio and like discovering things. And, I feel like such a sense of connection with these people that are no longer here, which
mm,
is,
mm.
kind of interesting to be able to have conversations. Um, and yeah, and I think it's really just that sense of like when you're working and you're in flow and you just sort of lose track of time, right? And it's like all of a sudden, it's 3 hours and you just realize that you were in like a kind of a meditative state. So I think those sensations, are very freeing and make me feel like both like both like I've disappeared, but like I'm more connected.
Yes. Yep,
That makes sense.
definitely. Yeah, it really, really does. And that's something that I think about all the time is, sort of what happens to our memory when we're not around. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing that you revisit these works of people that, have passed and they're still informing your work. And through that, you're keeping them alive as well. And just a really beautiful connection in this through line throughout all of your work. I love that. Yeah.
I
And,
love
and you know, Go for it. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I love reading about artists' lives, and I'm reading
Yeah.
a great book right now on Simon Hontai, who was a French artist from the '60s. Molly Warnack, I believe, is the
Oh wow.
author. And they also just did a show of his work in New York in January that I got to see.
Oh wow.
So, just sort of diving in deep to one artist at a time is like really, um, I don't know, enlivening, like
Mhm.
inspirational to me, and just to explore like where I connect and where I differ, like and what I can add maybe to that conversation and what I can learn.
Definitely.
I feel like painting, it's like the longer I go, the more I realize like I have so much to learn and there's so many possibilities for growth and discovery and
Definitely.
so
Yeah. I feel like some people will say, "Oh my goodness, like how am I ever?" But I love that that's so inspiring to you. And I do the same thing whenever I've got some, computer work to do for the gallery. I'll watch documentaries on artists or musicians, and I'm always like looking for like whatever their like candle is that they always have lit and sort of
yeah.
pulling from that. Plus, I think about all the artists that I'm either going to work with or want to meet or represent, and it's really, really fun to to be that person who puts together the shows. And it's so funny when I opened the gallery, I was like, oh, I feel like my taste is under a little bit of a microscope. And it's like, yeah, it is. Like I'm choosing whatever I want to
Yeah. Well,
exhibit. I must be a little confident in that, but at the same point, like it's not my work. So like just my idea is being vulnerable, but the works on the wall are, I sort of get to hide behind that a little bit.
I,
Which is why I
yeah.
wanted to start doing these lives and to, see the artist and, and sort of force myself to be out there a little bit.
Well, curating is an artistic expression
It,
in itself. So
yeah,
it is.
yeah.
I mean, putting the paintings together the way you do, like it is an act of creation. So
Yeah, for sure. When we go to hang, it's definitely one of these things. It's not similar. It's similar in a little bit to being in the studio, right? Like you're making so many quick decisions. Typically, I'm under a time. We're hanging on Tuesday, and the show opens on Saturday or something like this. But also, you sort of get into it, and I can't often describe like why paintings need to go next to one another. It's just sort of like this gut feeling that I have. I think about the wall space, how many artists I have, how much work I have, but I'll, put something next to one another and just say like, nah, that's not going to work. Like, that's not my thing.
yeah.
One idea I had that I would love to do is hang a show and then ask another curator to come in and hang it again. And they haven't seen what I've done.
Yeah.
And I think like that spurred from hanging this exhibition because I hang something and I say, oh, well, I did it. Like, how could it get any better at all? Like, this is all, I answered all of the questions, like it goes. And the work is so abstract and it works so well together that I thought like, I wonder, if somebody else did it, like how would it kind of come out? So I think I'm going to try to do that in the
Yeah.
future
Yeah.
and just ask them to not look at anything, take everything out of the gallery, have them come in and do it again. And I definitely like, I'll for people who are like, oh, where is your work? Or, sort of a little bit of an education that it's not my work I put on the exhibition. I'll describe myself as almost like a collage artist in a way, because it's like, okay, I'm sort of putting everything or reacting to things and then making this experience for people to come in and walk in and enjoy. But yeah, definitely. Oh, we lost Kelly. Oh my goodness. Thank you everyone for joining. Let's see if we can get her back. That's so funny. That's never happened before. There you are. Excellent. Kelly's like, I'm done. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
I'm getting all these messages. I tried to swipe it off.
Oh, yes, for sure. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
think you brought up a good thing about like there is at the residency that I was just at, we had also writers, and it was really fascinating to hear their process.
Yes.
And I found a lot of similarities between sort of the writing, the creative part, and then the
Yes.
editing. And I think we go through that too as painters, where we paint and then we edit, right? And then we paint and then we edit. And so that is also kind of part of that curating that I think you're talking about, is that sort of editing, like, throwing everything up on the wall maybe, and then figuring out how to adjust things.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely when I first opened, I was like very, very nervous. And obviously, I'm nervous all the time, making sure everything looks good. But, first couple shows, they looked awesome. Nobody said, this looks stupid. Which nobody has ever. I was like so nervous that people were going to be like, well, I don't know why you would hang that painting next to that painting. But it's like, nobody's thinking about the work like that. Nobody's thinking about the exhibition like that. So I've definitely been like more confident, which is really good because like, no, this is how I know I want to do it. And then, sort of this gets hung up. And it's funny because I always forget like how exhausting it is doing a show like that. And, this is my side hustle. I'll work all day, meet my husband here. We hang the shows together. So we'll be leaving at like 11 or midnight that night. And we love to like hang the show, come back the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is it still working? It does something need
Right.
to be tweaked. Like at that point, we definitely need to like take a break and then come back to it. And most of the time, I'm usually really happy with all the decisions that we made. And especially with this show, it was so much fun to put up. And I feel so grateful to be able to represent your work and to spend more time with it.
Thank you
Definitely.
so much. Thank you for spending all the time and curating it and being really thoughtful with placement.
My pleasure. Definitely. Excellent. Excellent. Well, there's a couple more weeks to see this exhibition. It's on view until April 28th. And you can also view the exhibition online. When you go to Seesaw Dog Gallery, click right on exhibition info there. We have every piece that's available to lots of detail shots, and you can experience the work that way. You can also book an appointment with me or stop by this week or this weekend to see the exhibition. And I just want to say thank you so much, Kelly. It's been so much fun spending time with
Thank
you.
you so much, Amy.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everybody.